Hello and welcome everyone to my contribution to the Experimentation Conference 2024. And my contribution is the AI integration in the product experimentation lifecycle study, which I will guide you through in this presentation. Before we come to the actual results and presentation, I would like to introduce myself a bit. So first of all, I'm a product leader. I have a lot of experience with experimentation. So I've been using A/B testing and other experimentation methodologies in smaller, larger B2C as well as B2B companies. I'm also like a strategic advisor and a product advisor, especially for companies that just want to get started with product discovery or A/B testing. And I also offered a book which is called Experimental Product Development. And this was published by Springer. Unfortunately, is currently only available in German. Also, I have a couple of different research interests. So, first of all, I'm very interested in what it means that we can essentially build more or less all products that we earlier imagined and where we had to validate the feasibility first earlier. Now we can always create them. And what does this mean for working together if we move to a more hypothesis driven world? And what does this mean for product development as well? Also, I'm very curious in how in-house team basically build out their own internal experimentation capabilities, but also how they measure the success of their individual teams doing experimentation. I'm also interested in what are new challenges and skills that you need nowadays to actually do proper experimentation, but also how to integrate AI into this whole life cycle. So with this, we come to the agenda for today. So first of all, I will give you a bit of a background of the study. I will introduce also the method of the study, and then we already come to the results. And the results are mainly the use cases of artificial intelligence, the benefits, the challenges, and then I will give a bit of an outlook and explain like what exactly are my contributions. So before we dive into the methodology, I want to give a bit of a background because when you hear AI and experimentation, you could think that we are talking about using experimentation for AI. And in this situation, it basically means that machine learning models or large language models can only really be improved by using something like A/B testing. You literally have to just run a few models in production and test them against each other and see which one just performs better. However, this is not what I was interested with the study. What I was rather interested in with the study is how we can use AI for experimentation. And that means we have essentially a process of how we do experiments, slightly different than probably most companies. But essentially, I asked myself and I asked experts, how can we improve the efficiency of every single step in this experimentation process lifecycle? And this is what the study is about. So I conducted a lot of interviews for this study. So I conducted in total 36 semi-structured interviews with experts in the field of experimentation. There were a couple of criteria that I used. So first of all, I wanted to make sure to cover the entire experimentation ecosystem. So I wanted to include in-house teams as well as experimentation platform owners, also agencies, but also the researchers who already published something about experimentation. This in total like just prevented a singular view, which usually comes from the in-house teams that maintain their own experimentation platform. Also, of course, I wanted to have like a high amount of experience with experimentation. So I made sure that I have, like a high average of experience, which in this case is around 10 years. And this just made sure that they know every single step in the experimentation process, but also that they can properly evaluate if AI can help to improve this step. Also, I wanted to make sure that I include both smaller and bigger companies because In this case, of course, the use cases might be a bit different regarding also the maturity level of the experimentation platform, but also the experimentation teams. So I have, for example, 14 companies in these 36 semi-structured interviews with less than 50 full-time employees and 15 companies with more than 5,000 full-time employees. Also, I wanted to make sure that I have like a very diverse view with regards to the departments that I include in this presentation or in the study. And I wanted to make sure that I have product, design, and engineering, as well as data, probably represented in the study, because each function, of course, in the life cycle has a bit of a different challenge, I'd say. And with this, we already come to like an overview of the results. So as I already said in the beginning, I identified 23 different use cases for AI and attributed them to in total 8 different steps in the product experimentation lifecycle. I also have an analysis of what are the specific benefits that are associated with using AI, but I also have a first idea of what are the specific challenges of using AI in this particular field. So, with this, we dive into the results of my study.
Hi, this is Romo Santiago, founder of Experiment Nation. To celebrate our 5th anniversary, we are holding weekly giveaways until November 29th. Prizes include books, free consultation services, and even a t-shirt. To enter, simply join Experiment Nation Slack and fill out the entry form that can be found in the description or through the QR code on the screen. Now back to the session.
So, how do teams imagine to use AI in the experimentation lifecycle? For this, as I said, created a couple of interviews, and the results are the following ones. I have 8 different steps identified that are mentioned frequently, or where the specific things that the people mentioned can be attributed to these 8 different steps. And in my opinion, it is not too surprising that actually data analysis and experiment execution are on top here. This is often the first thing that comes to mind to people when they think about AI and integrating this in the product experimentation lifecycle. And it's often also something that they struggle a lot with. But what I find very interesting are that right after this comes that the insight derivation, so that people think it is very helpful to actually extract some of the insights and conclusions from the experimentation data, and also from, let's say, the entire like research repository. I will go into a bit more detail there in the following slide. But also, what a lot of people actually said is the hypothesis formulation can be really supported by using artificial intelligence. And this was something that was very striking. Also, the other things like idea generation, experimentation design, and implementation of learnings, in my opinion, are not that spectacular to specifically mention. What I would also like to emphasize a bit, because this is, in my opinion, quite interesting, is that prioritization is the last one. And this is striking for me because, when we solved all of the challenges with AI that exist, the only question really becomes like, okay, what are we doing first, right? So it's, after all, a prioritization question itself. So it's a bit surprising that only a few people actually mentioned this. And yeah, this is something that I would like to emphasize. And of course, we have also identified 23 very specific use cases. I don't want to go through every single one, but maybe just to emphasize a couple of them. So, first of all, we have, of course, the process step idea generation. And here, this is a nice pattern that I will emphasize also in the next slide. First of all, people say, of course, it is very easy for artificial intelligence and especially for Gen AI to create a lot of different variations. This is the one thing that it just takes over the content creation essentially, but also it can support a lot with the ideation process itself. So, for example, if you have a workshop or something like this, and you have stickies from various team members, then you can essentially just tell AI to attribute them to a certain cluster of content, and this basically supports and also speeds up the whole ideation process. Next, we have hypothesis formulation, and there we also have a couple of use cases identified. So especially the peer review support essentially means when you are about to already enter a hypothesis, that AI can immediately tell you if this is a good hypothesis or give you some tips on how to improve the hypothesis. Of course, we can also like use language data that exists within the company and connect it to the research repository, for example, that you have, and use this to create new hypotheses. Also, you can, of course, test different hypotheses or test different ways of formulating the hypotheses against each other. And also, you can, similar to the idea generation, you can just use Gen AI to create the different hypotheses via generating it. Third, there is the prioritization aspect, and of course, also here it helps a lot when using historical data of experiments and try to assess, okay, what is the actual impact, and based on this, then improve the prioritization. But also, since we also could see the past experiments, we can also have a couple of metrics that we suggest for the specific prioritization in this case. So there are also like multiple use cases possible. I want to skip a few of these. So experiment design, experiment execution, and data analysis, in my opinion, are quite, those are the more or less first things that come to mind. What is more interesting is actually insight derivation and implementation of learnings. So also when it comes to insight derivation, a lot of, especially like agencies, struggle with the knowledge management of all the experiments that they run. So this is of course something where AI can support transforming unstructured data into structured data and create a knowledge management system. But also, the way we store this can be helped by artificial intelligence, similar to the hypothesis peer review support. We can also use a peer review support in the insight derivation, so in the way we store these different insights that we got beforehand. And also, of course, a huge capability of AI is actually like how they summarize the insights. And this can also be used, of course. Also, the implementation of learnings is, of course, a nice thing where AI can support. For example, it can help to create continuous monitoring, help to scale these successful changes, but also to apply these changes. And one thing that was particularly striking when I went through these interviews is that people all always differentiated between two, let's say, levels on how they view AI. So you can see this nicely when it comes to hypothesis formulation and insight derivation. So the first step on the left side is rather always about, okay, I give ChatGPT a bit of context and like let them come up with hypothesis, like 10 hypotheses for the website. But also thinking about, okay, we need to store the entire content somewhere, and then the AI engine can essentially support us and create new hypotheses based on like a foundation or lake full of knowledge that we have, maybe even across different companies. The question is then always like, like how far are we taking this? Similar to insight derivation, so either, like it just supports a bit to create the knowledge base, or just to use the lessons learned from the past experiments to suggest some improvements. Yes, and those were already the main results, but of course, I also gathered a few insights around the benefits or the specific benefits of using AI for experimentation, and I will quickly also talk about this. So, first of all, I mean, the interesting thing here is really when you look at all these different attributions or all these different clusters, you have mainly that AI increases speed and efficiency, right? So those are all forms of speed and efficiencies, or it creates new insights. So, for example, enhanced data analysis and insight generation just creates new content and new ideas, new hypotheses, and new learnings. But the rest is mainly about like improving the efficiency and also lowering the costs. And I also talked with a lot of consulting firms actually on how they see AI, and they say when they talk to customers and clients who are interested in working with AI, mostly what they say is they want to reduce costs by automating their processes. So this is very much in line with, I would say, what the major SME industry is actually like asking for. There are also, of course, a couple of challenges coming with using AI, but I think this is not really specific for AI and experimentation. Actually, I mean, of course, the first thing that you say here is that some of these specific artifacts or specific templates that are connected with experimentation are not accurate or don't have the quality that people want. But this is always something that we can essentially use or solve by getting rid of the hallucination or rather providing context to ChatGPT. What I, however, found a very interesting thing that was mentioned a couple of times is the over-reliance on AI. So, over-reliance means this is the risk associated with using too much AI. So, for example, I said earlier that prioritization will probably become a big thing, right? Because when we figured out every single thing, the only thing is left to decide what we do first. But how would it feel for like a product development team, for example, if they get told what to do first and what to do next? Maybe this is really, really devastating for their entire motivation. So this is actually like a very interesting point on what can be the effect if we have too much decisions essentially made using AI. So this is a very interesting challenge where I think it makes a lot of sense also to go a bit deeper even and try to explore this also maybe with a psychological context. Lastly, there is a summary and an outlook that I want to give. So as I already mentioned, this step that I did in the study is just it's just an early step, but it gives a nice idea on also what is possible or what people think is possible to actually use AI in the earlier steps of the experimentation life cycle. The study also maps the entire opportunity space. So we basically have a holistic picture. Essentially, you could write a paper or you could explore every single of these use cases with your company and try to use AI in this particular steps, right? Also, I think it's quite nice that this is actually also aligned with a lot of in line with a lot of research that the benefits currently are considered to outweigh the challenges of using artificial intelligence. And also the study can help a lot of these experimentation teams and in-house teams to identify a specific step in their experimentation life cycle and even like discover gaps. So where they didn't even think about using AI and where they then maybe get the conclusion that it's still possible. For future research, there are a couple of things. So first of all, of course, the challenges are always interesting when it comes to artificial intelligence and experimentation. And consequently, if you have certain challenges, it's also always interesting to think about like how can we mitigate these challenges. So the challenges that I mentioned, how can we overcome them in the AI in the experimentation context? Is this specific or are these the typical things essentially? What I would also find very interesting is to build some sort of like model that explains or classifies further the way AI fulfills the task. So I mentioned a couple of things the capabilities of AI is translation, but also summarization, and also like how deep the integration is or how exactly the support looks. So is it just, that they use a prompt, or is it like fully taking over the job of like someone involved in experimentation itself? Yes, so this is the presentation. Thanks a lot for the opportunity to give this talk and give this presentation. I also want to give you a couple of things that you can use to reach out to me. I would be very, very happy if you get in touch with me via LinkedIn if you have a question around this presentation, but also if you have some ideas on how to take the study further, as well as any idea related to the topics that I addressed in the beginning. You can also have a look at my academic chair where I'm doing a PhD. Also, yeah, feel free to get in touch anytime you want. I'm super happy for everyone who has a question around this. Thanks a lot and enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye bye.
Hi, this is Romo Santiago, founder of Experimentation. To celebrate our 5th anniversary, we are holding weekly giveaways until November 29th. Prizes include books, free consultation services, and even a t-shirt. To enter, simply join Experimentation Slack and fill out the entry form that can be found in the description or through the QR code on the screen. Now back to the session.